All right, so now we're going on to day 3. This was the day I'm sitting in 85th after day 1. We had some guys move into the area a little bit more where Kurt and I had started in the morning. We were working around each other. It was all friendly. Just one little key spot that we had all keyed on. I couldn't get on the area right away, day 2. I was kind of working around in there. Caught a short, caught a keeper that was about 1.5 pounds. And then eventually I was able to get into the sweet spot. And that was when I picked up my spinning rod. It was my favorite rod. It's a Hex. It was a 7.2. And the day was kind of different than day 1. It wasn't raining. It wasn't all windy. So I thought I was going to go out there and just punch and catch them. And it really wasn't working. So I picked up a wacky rigged Zinker Z, and I would actually Nico rig it and put a little 1/32 ounce Eco Pro Tungsten nail weight in the tail of it. Put that on my Hayabusa wacky rig hook, and it was a 2.0. Throw it out there, get it down the hydrilla, and just kind of worked it back real slow. So I made this cast. Wasn't my finest moment, but I hook one, it jumps. It was a giant. If you see my practice video, I caught an 8-pounder flipping this setup right here on the last day of practice. It was the only fish I hooked that day, and it was just an absolute beast. Same spot, hook it, it jumps out of the water. I'm fighting it, get my net all set up, run to the trolling motor, trying to turn around, kind of get some better angle on it. I'm fighting it, and it ends up burying me up in the hydrilla. As it feel it swimming through there, I'm trying to slow it down, and my line is popped. There's just situations like that. You can't do anything about it. It just kind of happens. It wasn't really a fair fight I had going on there with that spinning rod when you catch a giant like that and have them hooked up. But I let it bother me for maybe 5 minutes. You had to think about it. You're kind of shaking your head. You'll see, you can hear there's some guys in the background yelling how big it was when it jumps and all that. And I just kind of tried to put it behind me, put the spinning rod away for the time being, and I picked up my other rod, my favorite. It was a Hex. It's the 7.6, and I was throwing that out there, 1/4 ounce weight. I was pegging that as well with an Eco Pro Tungsten weight. I was throwing a 1/4 ounce there. I was throwing the Zinker Z again, and I was throwing that on a 5.0 Hayabusa EWG hook. And what I was doing, because I could not get them to eat this flipping setup like I did on day 1 with that 3/4 ounce Eco Pro Tungsten weight, I couldn't get that reaction to go. So my next thought with it being flat out, I was making long casts, and I knew the area where those fish were at. I finally had some room to get in on it, and I just lost that giant one. So I started dragging that. I caught a 4-pounder. So things were looking up. I knew I needed like 1 or 2 4-pounders, and if I could get a bunch that were just 2 1/4 or bigger, I should get out of there getting a check. So I kind of hunkered down in this area, caught another one on that Zinker Z. It was a green pumpkin, just keeping it real natural in there. And it was like a 2 1/4, 2.5, something like that. So I'm feeling pretty good. I worked up a little bit more, turned around, throw in there again, and I catch another 4-pounder. So at this point, I'm feeling pretty good. I got 2 4s, like a 2.5, and a keeper at that point. It was a 1.5 pound, but it was the 15 inches. And it kind of died off. And I went through the same lull on day 1 from about probably 10:30 to 2, where it just really wasn't happening. They weren't pulling current yet. And I knew from day 1, around 2:30, it really picked up again at the end of the day. So I wanted to make sure I was on my best spot, which was that area, that little strip there. At the end of the day, I had a late day. I wasn't doing it until 4 o'clock. And I went and hit my kind of secondary areas, caught another one, ended up calling up 3 times, got to about probably 15 pounds or so. Yeah, probably 15 pounds. I was just happy with getting those fish. I called 3 times, I believe. It was a slower bite. I was still catching them, dragging that Zinker. I caught a couple on this setup here too with that big sexy, the 711, the Ardent Grand Reel, 65-pound braid. But I went back to that starting area, and I really just sat there last probably 45 minutes. And I was dragging through there, dragging. Caught a couple shorts. It wasn't really happening how I wanted it to. But then the wind started to pick up. And then the current started to pull. And just perfect conditions to throw that Z-Man jackhammer. I was throwing a 1/2 ounce. And I was just kind of crawling it across that hydrilla. As I would get across it, and I'd bury up in it, I'd pop it out and let it flutter back down, just kind of reeling it, winding it real slow. And I caught another 3 1/4, which jumped me up into that 16-pound range and put me from 85th up to 52nd. So I ended up missing the cut by 6 ounces. It was right there. I really wish I could have gone again the third day. I feel like with the opportunity of having that area to myself, since none of the other competitors made the cut there that day for the third day either, that I could have had a chance of catching a big bag if I could have just set up on it and not had the boat sitting on top of the hydrilla there. We just wouldn't have been sharing fish. It's part of the deal, so I'm not upset by that at any means, but it's just kind of how fishing goes out there, especially at Chickamauga. You look out on a ledge, you'll see 6 boats sitting right next to each other on top of each other. But overall, we got some great points out of this. We're now sitting in 5th place for the Angler of the Year point standings right now. We're going to La Crosse for the Mississippi River. That'll be our next event. So I'm going to start brainstorming, trying to get ideas for that. I've been there one time, so it didn't go the greatest, but I'm ready to put my take the next step. Hopefully climb up the Angler of the Year rankings a little bit more and have a shot at it at St. Clair. So thanks for watching. Please subscribe. I have 2 idling videos on Lake Chickamauga if you're interested in seeing how the ledges go. And day 1 and practice are also up. So thanks for following along, and please subscribe. Not a giant, but we'll take it.
Yeah. It was 15, right?
Oh, he's 15, yeah. Have to pick it up again. Oh, that a bass? Oh,
That's a good one. It worked out just when you thought. think it's that current there. 'Cause I'm pulling a little bit. I think it is moving.
Yeah.
Dude, you got it. Get that pig in here. Nice job, dude. You want a picture? Or you want to keep going?
No, you're good.
All right.
It's a 3-pounder. That's good. It makes me feel better.
Yeah, man.